be described in words. I request everyone to kindly observe 2 minutes of silence to pay homage to the departed soul. Om Shanti. Thank you. Please be seated. A very good evening to one and all. Indira Gandhi National Center for Arts, in collaboration with List Institute, Hungarian Cultural Center, Delhi, Embassy of Hungary in India, and Tibet House, Cultural Center of His Holiness Dalai Lama, New Delhi, feels delighted and joyous to welcome you all on this historical event of photo documentary exhibition on the eminent Hungarian philologist, Orientalist, author of the first Tibetan English dictionary, Alexander Csoma de Kőrös, the one who opened the window for Tibetan studies to the Western scholars, the world renowned Hungarian Bodhisattva. The IGNCA has been collaborating with the Hungarian Cultural Center for a long time. In this course of Alexander Soma Memorial Exhibition, which starts today and till 15th of October 2021, we remember the work of Soma in IGNCA in a series of lectures by Hungarian and Indian scholars. And I now invite Dr. Sachidanand Joshi, Honorable Member Secretary and President, Bharatiya Shikshan Mandal, to kindly come on the stage and render his welcome address. Dr. Sachidanand Joshi. And I also invite all the guests to please be on the dais. We are fortunate that we have with us Mrs. Meenakshi Lekhi, Minister of State for External Affairs and Culture of India. I invite Professor Ko to be on the dais. Professor Sarao to please be on the dais. And now I invite Dr. Sachidanand Joshi, Honorable Member Secretary, to kindly render his welcome address.
Namaskar. On behalf of Indira Gandhi National Center for the Arts and the Hungarian Cultural Center and the Tibet Cultural Center, I welcome the Honorable Minister for State, External Affairs and Culture, Mrs. Meenakshi Lekhi, eminent Buddhist scholar, Professor KTS Sarao, visiting Professor Dr. Margaret Kovas, His Excellency the Ambassadors of Kazakhstan and Austria, my dear colleagues, dignitaries from different embassies, and scholars who have joined this program. We are privileged to conduct this exhibition known as Pilgrim Scholar in Tibet, Alexander Csoma. And in this connection, we are also conducting a symposium and series of webinars. This exhibition is connected to the international symposium held in the Indira Gandhi National Center for the Arts, organized jointly with the Hungarian Cultural Institute in 2014, titled Buddhist Transaction in Tibetan Literature and Art, and to the Stain exhibition and the conference held in the Indira Gandhi National Center for the Arts in 2015. Alexander Csoma, who was born in 1784 and died in 1842, 200 years ago, in 1821, reached two important stations of his journey, Mashhad and Bukhara in Central Asia. Here he prepared for his Indian journey, where in correspondence with the most advanced academic positions of the age, he wanted to discover the ancestors of Hungarians. After reaching Lahore and Kashmir, Csoma met William Moorcraft in June 1822, and his discussions with Moorcraft persuaded him that he can find important information about the predecessors of Hungarians in the Tibetan historical sources. Armed with letters of recommendations, he left for Jangla and studied with a Tibetan teacher Sangyas Rigyas Phun Toshe. He continued his studies later in Janskar and Khanam, and by 1830 he had enough material for his Tibetan grammar and dictionary and for an overview of Tibetan culture and civilization. If you see the exhibition, we are able to display the dictionary which was written by Mr. Csoma. And this is, in fact, the first dictionary of its own kind, and we can imagine how he could manage this thing merely 200 years ago. In this course of exhibition, between 4th to 17th October, we remember the work of Alexander Csoma and other Hungarian scholars in a series of lectures. We would also be organizing some webinars, and we have invited eminent scholars from different fields, from India and from Hungary, and from other scholars to discuss in these webinars. On 20th October, this exhibition will open in the Asiatic Society of Bengal and go on till 29th of October there. And we are privileged that a galaxy of scholars who have assembled here are witnessing the inauguration of this function. Our Honorable Minister has been very busy. We know she has been traveling throughout this month. I have been following her on Facebook and watching her. Every day she was almost visiting one country from another and attending the meetings. I am happy that still she could find out time to come here. I am also thankful to His Excellency, the Ambassador of Hungary, who is not present today because of his illness. And we all know that because of this COVID protocol, anybody who feels a little bit of temperature becomes shaky of attending this public gatherings. But we must thank him in his absentia for his kind support and help which he has provided, and the confidence which he has reposed in the Indira Gandhi National Center for the Arts. I once again welcome all the distinguished dignitaries in this inaugural function. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Joshi. And now I request again to Dr. Sachidanand Joshi, Honorable Member Secretary, IGNCA, to kindly felicitate our esteemed guests. Can we have a huge round of applause? Srimati Meenakshi Lekhi, Honorable Union Minister of State for Culture and External Affairs, Government of India. Dr. Ramesh Chandra Gaur is felicitating Professor Karam Tet Singh Sarao, Department of Buddhist Studies, Delhi University. Professor Gaur is Honorable Dean for Academics, IGNCA. And now Dr. Coves. Ladies and gentlemen, after the exhibition is over in IGNCA, it will travel to Kolkata and probably open there on 25th or 26th October. A number of Csoma's work were published by Asiatic researchers and the Journal of Asiatic Society of Bengal, which he chose for his last moment. And now to give us a brief introduction to exhibition, may I please invite Dr. Margaret Coves, who is Master's in Philology from Budapest and a doctorate from Department of Buddhist Studies, University of Delhi, author, co-author for great literary works, and an editor too for some great publications. May I please invite Dr. Coves.
Respected Minister Meenakshi Lekiji, Secretary Shraddhananda Joshiji, Professor Saraoji, and respected Director Professor Ramesh Gaur. Almost a year ago, in an interview, the librarian of the Hungarian Academy of Sciences, Professor István Monok, drew my attention to the fact that the Oriental collection of the Academy Library is curating an exhibition on the life and the work of Alexander Csoma de Kőrös. I was sure that the exhibition would be very interesting, very pertinent in India, where we call him for short Csoma, lived and worked in the last 20 years of his life. I was also convinced that Csoma's life and work would be very relevant, since for the last 16 years we have a competition among students of Hungarian named after Csoma, the Alexander Csoma de Kőrös essay competition. If I look around in the audience, I see at least 3 students who won prizes at this exhibition, at this competition. In early April, Csoma Day is celebrated either in the embassy or in the university. This was when Csoma was born on the 9th April, or this is what we know about his birth. In a new wave of COVID-19 epidemics and offices functioning from home, both in Delhi and in Hungary, and the devastation caused to friends and relatives' health made the project look very uncertain. In this uncertainty, I found solid support in Professor Ramesh Gaur, who was ready for work when offices opened and who added very many precious ideas to the exhibition. Our own support base, the Liszt Institute, Hungarian Cultural Center, and its directors, Pál Boldog-Szabó, and now the recent director, Dr. Marian Erdő, were backing us. Ambassador András Király and his wife, Orsolya Bernát, also constantly supported the plan of the Csoma exhibition, and they rang me this afternoon and sent their greetings and apologies for being unable to attend this event because of Orsolya's illness. We Hungarians like to present Csoma to students as a model of perseverance and sacrifice in the interest of learning new languages, widening our horizons, and merging ourselves more deeply in the history of our past and relating it to the past of other nations. This is also why we named the yearly essay competition in Delhi University after Alexander Csoma de Kőrös. Csoma was a living part of our past. Novels and poetry were written about him in the 19th century. More Jókai in his novel Epursi Move and the Earth Still Moves centers around the figure of Csoma. The poets Lajos Áprili, Gyula Juhász, and Sándor Endrődy wrote poems about Csoma. And even in the English poet Robert Browning, in the poem The Grammarian, writes about the grave above Darjeeling, which refers to Csoma's grave, obviously. Csoma is also part of our present, and novels and poetry are still written about him in a new comprehensive understanding. Such is the novel written by András Müllner, which was published in 2000, and the play by Gábor Lanckor, written in 2010. Tibor Szemző shot a film in India entitled Guest of Life in 2006. The exhibition leads us through Csoma's birth in Transylvania, in Csoma de Kőrös, his schools in Nagyenyed, where he studied and taught. He was a scholarship student and studied and taught in the later years. It guides us to Göttingen in Germany and presents Csoma's professors Eichhorn, Blumenbach, and Heeren, who guided him in the most recent discoveries in history, geography, and anthropology. The exhibition leads us further to Csoma's travels from 1819, from Transylvania to Bratislava, Sofia, and then later to Alexandria and Beirut and Aleppo, often modifying his journey according to outbreaks of epidemics. His complete journey is presented on a map, which you have just seen on the wall of the IGNCA, from Csoma de Kőrös to Darjeeling, also through Kanam, Zangla, and Kolkata, where his studies and work were done, and the graveyard in Darjeeling, where he was buried after a brief illness and fever. The exhibition also presents the response to Csoma's work in Brian Hodgson, Salmon Cesar Malen, Dr. Denison Roths, then the Hungarian Count István Széchenyi, and his first well-known biographer, the British-Hungarian Theodor Duka. Csoma's global significance is connected with his opening an until then unknown area, Tibetan Buddhism, Tibetan history, language, and cosmology. This exhibition presents these areas linked to Csoma's life and work. Some areas of his work come into new focus with the age. Earlier, his Tibetan grammar and dictionary were paid more attention. And now a new field got attention, the so-called Alexander books, where he sought answers to questions on Buddhist philosophy, cosmology, Tibetan history, and so on. The Alexander books are considered to be now the most valuable part of Csoma's heritage and recognized as memory of the world by the UNESCO. Gergely Orosz's lecture will take place on the 8th of October in the IGNCA, and luckily it will be a live lecture because he could visit us as the curator of the exhibition. On the 12th of October, the other curator of the exhibition, Dr. Ágnes Kelecsényi, will speak about the place of the Csoma collection in the Oriental Library of the Academy of Sciences. On the 18th, there will be a webinar where a number of scholars from India and Hungary will participate and speak about several connected areas about Indo-Hungarian encounters. We thank all the support of IGNCA, both their intellectual and technical input. We thank Professor Gar and his team, Dr. Sumit Roy and Dr. Shirpi Loy, and the Hungarian Embassy and the Liszt Hungarian Cultural Institute, the director, Marian Erdő, and her technical staff, first of all, Amit Kumar and Harleen Aluvalia. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Kos. And as we have with us our guest of honor, Professor Karam Tet Singh Sarao From Department of Buddhist Studies, University of Delhi, Professor Sarao, whose Masters in History, MPhil in Chinese and Japanese Studies, and Doctorate in Buddhism from Delhi University. I request Dr. Sarao to kindly render your address and present your views.
Honorable Minister, Mrs. Meenakshi Lekhi, Professor Sachidanand Joshi, Professor R.C. Gaur, Professor Margit Kovis, and Dharma brothers and sisters. In history, when we study the biography of a hero like the Buddha, the most important thing we talk about is what kind of work that this hero did made this person a hero. How the Buddha is seen as a hero in Buddhism. He was the son of a king, the Shakyan king in India, and he gave it up. He gave up a kingdom. And then for 6 years, he suffered all kinds of privations. Once, actually, he almost died. The kind of hardships in terms of intellectual search, and of course, in terms of the basic needs that a person needs to survive, the kind of extreme sacrifices the Buddha makes. Similarly, when we think of Alexander Soma Grossi Sandoz, when you look at the very travelogue that he sort of undergoes, is most amazing. He left Hungary with incomplete documents because there was sort of conscription there. Government wouldn't have allowed him to leave. So he leaves with incomplete documents with only 200-300 florins in his pocket. And all that money he exhausts by the time he enters India, actually much before that. And then he meets Mr. Moorcroft, who gets him some assistance from the British Empire, which was actually in the process of being established in India. Got a help of 50 rupees. And with these 50 rupees, he survived in Janskar for 18 months, where temperature goes down to something like 70-75 degrees below zero, without any heating, without much food. And he had to pay 2 teachers from whom he was trying to learn Prakrit and other languages of that area. And in the process, he was able to gather 40,000 words of the Tibetan language and was able to translate them properly into English language. And the kind of hardships he undergoes is most amazing. It was on the basis of this that the Japanese in 1933 declared him to be a bodhisattva, rightfully so. And when suddenly the British realized that there was another person who had done some work on Tibetan language and grammar, they stopped his assistance. And the poor person survived even without those 50 rupees. And then a short while later, the British realized that no, that work is not good enough at all. They approached Alexander Soma Grossi again to continue with the work, so on and so forth. And then, of course, he finally comes to Calcutta, where the Asiatic Society hires him to work as a librarian. Even here, the kind of assistance he was getting was so meager that he was sleeping on the floor and was undergoing such severe penances like an Indian ascetic that he was barely able to even get enough food, even during that period. Then, of course, Finally, he was able to manage some funds and decided to go to Tibet. And the Tibetans and even some of the British thought he was a sort of spy. In fact, by Captain Kennedy, he was actually arrested. And most wonderful, in a very dignified and silent manner, he underwent all these humiliations without any complaint. Perhaps those of you who are familiar with the establishment of the British Empire in India know that in the initial process, as many as 90% of these people died due to malaria and heat. The death toll was so high amongst the British. And unfortunately, Csoma Sendor also died due to malaria. Very, very tragic. But as a student of Buddhism, when I look at the contribution that Csoma Sendor made towards Buddhism, is most amazing in those days. It was so very difficult to travel and survive. So my hats off to him. I therefore would like to congratulate and personally express my gratitude towards the Ministry of Culture, IGNCA, Hungarian Embassy, and all those people who are associated with the establishment of this exhibition. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Sarao. And ladies and gentlemen, we feel privileged and fortunate with the presence of Mrs. Meenakshi Lekhi, Minister of State for External Affairs and Culture of India, a politician with the wit and wisdom of a lawyer, columnist, and a fearless voice on issues that matters most to people at large. She has been keenly active in taking Indian culture to international levels and inscribing India's golden heritage to leading international organizations and platforms, including UNESCO. Our honorable chief guest for the evening. May we have a huge round of applause for Mrs. Meenakshi Lekhi, and I kindly request, ma'am, please come here and present your views. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joshiji, Professor Margaret Coves, Shri Tej Singh Saro, Rameshji, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. I was just thinking that how destiny joins the dots. So I was in Bukhara, and I was thinking about how changing the culture changes the people. And the conversation was woven around Afghanistan. So a land of Buddha, a land of Hinduism changes, the culture changes, and the people change. And it so happened that 2nd of October, we also celebrate it as Non-Violence Day, Mahatma Gandhi's birth anniversary. And I keep wondering when I look around in this context that the land of non-violence is none other than India, because the principles of non-violence are enshrined in our texts, Hindu texts, which were simplified by all. And when we discuss Buddhism, especially the Tibetan Buddhism, the school from which Tibetan Buddhism has gone happens to be Nalanda. And when we discuss a scholar like Alexander Chumo, the fact is that he learned Sanskrit to inscribe the authentic text of Buddhism. So while Tibetan text becomes pertinent, but we also know that Tibetan text was written from Sanskrit text, and the reverse process is happening because a whole lot of that text in Sanskrit and Pali got lost because either it was stolen or it was desecrated or it was damaged. And under those circumstances, the rewriting from Tibetan text to Sanskrit text is what is going on. Why all this is relevant? Because this is relevant especially when we are communicating to the world at large. We understand how the politics gets played within the country and outside the country, and how a country which is the most tolerant of all keeps getting uh, denigrated by people who themselves have probably not understood the Indian culture very well. And when it comes to Indian heritage and culture, I'm here to quote the, the discussion is on Buddhism, about a writer, about an author, about a scholar who studied Buddhism and was also anointed as Bodhisattva in 1933. It can only be the strength of Indic religions who can do so. Because I was connecting two facts. One fact was that he has a grave in Darjeeling, which means he continued to be practicing Christian. And since he continued to be a practicing Christian, didn't become a Buddhist, the Buddhists never wanted him to convert and accept Buddhism to anoint him as Bodhisattva. That is the greatness of Indic religions, that you accept goodness no matter from where it comes. You accept people the way they are, you recognize scholarship, and you recognize hard work. That is the greatness of Indic religions. And why I use the word Indic religion also is my own theory on it, because when I was entering, I was looking at this knot which has been painted or plastered on the wall on the entrance gate. So whether it is the eternal knot in which our lives keep getting entangled, or it is uh, uh, the eight signs, Ashtamangala as we call it, uh, which is common to Buddhism, Jainism, and Hinduism. And even Sikhs, for that matter, come from Hindus, because when you are protecting Dharma, the Hinsa and Ahimsa both may have relevance depending on your opposition. And that is the strength which was shown. And we have seen how cultures, traditions have carried the traditions forward. So far as Sorrow's academic excellence is concerned, especially the force driving him to travel thousands of miles to come to a country in search of knowledge and to live there and dedicate his life to learning is true, is true to being a scholar, because that's what scholars are all about, be it Einstein, be it Soros, be it others who do everything for the sake of knowledge and completely immerse themselves in the pleasure of knowledge. For them, the food, the hunger, the weather, nothing matters. The driving force is seeking knowledge, and that seeking knowledge, that particular phenomena, that particular urge which drives them. And I know a whole lot of scholars are sitting on the dais. I'm no scholar, but I observe people. In that sense, I can call myself a social scientist, because you're observing people, you're watching their conduct, you're watching how societies move, how people move, and how they dedicate themselves. um, I think the driving force for anyone who is excellent at their job is complete immersion in that thought. And in this case, to my sense, he was truly like a rishi who was wanting to achieve great heights through the path of knowledge and academic excellence, devoted himself completely to learning languages, to immersing in other cultures, to accepting everything around, leading a very, very tough life. And the pleasure, I'm sure, was seeking the knowledge, which was his. Uh, I normally use a different word, and I say everybody in life needs adrenaline high, and that adrenaline high can come from various things. In case of such people, the adrenaline high came from reading, writing, and constantly challenging themselves. And only those who can reach that level of excellence are the people who are completely immersed in that very thought process. Uh, I know some people within my family We are all lawyers, but there are people who are completely immersed in legal postulates, and their head works only to decipher that mechanism. And whether it's food or party or anything, nothing matters. It's just that particular postulate to which they will keep finding an answer and keep researching and keep working. So I understand how academic superiority and excellence is achieved by people who are of that academic and intellectual persona. So a person like Soros, way back in 18th century, middle of 18th century, we know the travel, the transport mechanisms were tough. When the weather conditions would have been still tougher. But another nice thing which I would relate to Soros is that usually this Aryan invasion theory gets propounded by some people, but Soros proved was searching for the other answers. And today, by God's grace, we have genetics and we have science to prove the DNA theories. And DNA shows that the A1C DNA is present from India. And that A1C mutation happened in India, and people migrated out of India to various parts of Europe. So we have science to prove a theory, which Soros was trying to prove at that point in time. So I'm grateful to Soros for searching his roots, for bringing forth the knowledge, which was probably misunderstood by people of that time, who would have probably related Tibetan Buddhism to shamanism and other things. He deciphered the higher goals of life, and I'm sure we all can relate to it, that the metaphysical questions which we normally tend to push aside due to the physical existence of our lives, the way materialism expanded in 19th and 20th or 21st century, has taken us back due to COVID. And again, we are back to those metaphysical questions as to what this life is all about, and whether physical life or materialistic life is good enough as a goal to achieve, and whether sustainable development goals can be achieved by those following the materialistic path for life. So Soros studies, especially a person like me, I would say is very, very relevant, because it tells us that to remain happy in life, you really don't need too many material comforts. And to live a sustainable life, it's descaling, actually, which we all need to do. And consumerism and consumption is what we all need to control to protect Mother Earth. And if a person in 18th century could achieve that excellence with bare minimum tools, I'm sure in 21st century it's much easier. And we all need to proceed towards that. But the geography from that time till this time hasn't changed. Geography remains the same, so do the challenges remain the same. Even at that time, he was trying to go back to Central Asia when he met his demise. And that Central Asia and that region still remains a challenge for the world to see. So, principles which Soros followed in his life are absolutely relevant for all of us to go back. And I had a plan which I'm not revealing right now, but this entire region, Afghanistan, Turkmenistan, Kazakhstan, further down Uzbekistan, this entire region, we track, most people track our history and connectivity from 14th century, 16th century. But several centuries before Christ was born, we were connected. And Buddhism was also a root. So I think that needs to be retracked so that people know that when culture changes, psyche changes. And when psyche changes, lot many things happen. If a world has to be a better place for everyone, then psyche needs to change. And those changes need to happen here. With these words, thank you very much. Jai Hind.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for such a wonderful address. And now we have with us Dr. Ramesh Chandra Gaur, PhD, a Fulbright Scholar, Dean, Academics, Head Kalanidhi Division IGNCA, OSD Indian Institute of Heritage, Ministry of Culture, Government of India, and also part of two very important UNESCO committees, UNESCO International Advisory Committee on Memory of the World programs and UNESCO Global Task Force on Indigenous Language. I request Dr. Gaur to kindly guide us further about the forthcoming events in this series and to render word of thanks.
Good evening. Namaskar. IGNC is having a very strong ties with the Hungarian Cultural Center. Scholars, Hungarian scholar, both working in India and Hungary. We have been doing number of events in the past, and we have wonderful publications. We have books. We have created a multimedia, and most importantly, we have one of the finest collection of paintings, Elizabeth Brunner and Sass Brunner, which was donated to IGNCA under the will of the painters. And this program, when Hungarian Cultural Center and Professor Kopp contacted us to organize this program, to organize this exhibition, I thought exhibition is something is seen by only few people who are coming to physically see at IGNCA, and we thought let's make it one of the memorable event and have some multiple programs during this particular event. And in this series, some glimpses have already been provided by Professor Kovic to you, but I would like to give you more details so you can join us in those programs also. On 8th of October, in the same hall, we have a wonderful lecture by one of the curator of the exhibition, Gergely or Orosz, who is speaking on the Alexander book, and Dr. Sonal Mansi, the eminent cultural icon, is going to chair that particular discussion. So we invite you for this physical lecture in the same hall. On 12th of October, we are going to have a online lecture. Another curator of the exhibition, Agnes Calicini, she is going to speak on Alexander Csoma de Kőrös and the Oriental research in Hungary. So that is going to be chaired by our member secretary, Dr. Sachidanand Joshi. It is online and it will be live on Facebook and also on Zoom. Link will be available on IGNCA Facebook page. And to conclude this memorable series of event, we are going to have a webinar, Cultural Interaction Between India and Hungary. That is going to be held on Zoom. And we have scholars from both India and Hungary. So that will be also available on Facebook Live and Zoom. Some of the speaker, one of our ex-colleague, Professor Radha Banerjee, she will be there. We also have Director of Tibet House as a speaker. Then we have Professor Imre Lazar, who was earlier Director of Hungarian Cultural Center. And of course, we have a scholar from Asiatic Society, Kolkata, which was mentioned here. So these all events are going to be very interesting, and I'm sure you all will join us in those events also. So now, I know you all are waiting to conclude the program. I will not take more time. I just want to humbly extend a very hearty welcome, a hearty vote of thanks to our guests who are present there. We are indeed great honor to have Srimati Meenakshi Lekhi, Honorable Minister for State and External Affairs, Culture and External Affairs, to inaugurate this exhibition. Ma'am, we are so grateful to you that you are the most appropriate person to inaugurate this exhibition. Apart from that, Madam is taking the dissemination and promotion of Indian cultural heritage all over the world. And that is something I have seen after a long time, that India is so aggressively taking care of its cultural heritage at various global platforms. So we are honored to have you, ma'am, and thank you very much for your kind presence and blessings. I also express my sincere thanks to guest of honor, Professor Karamte Singh Sarao. Thank you, Professor Sarao, for your presence and your address. I'm grateful to Professor Margaret Coates, who has been constantly interacting with us, and she is one of the person who was closely working on various programs and event, and also coordinating with the various scholars in Hungary. So thank you, Professor Coates, for your all support. Of course, without those curators, Gergely, Orosz, and Agnes Calicini, it could not have been possible to have this event. Thank you very much, both of you. I also would like to thank uh, all other director of Hungarian Cultural Center, Marin, and colleague Harleen, and also His Excellency Ambassador. Because of his wife's illness, he is not able to join us, but he has promised to visit the exhibition very soon, maybe next week. Uh, we are grateful to the director of Tibet House for lending some of the material for this exhibition. His colleagues, Mr. Tanjing and all. And of course, my own team, my colleague from Kalanidhi and all other divisions who have been actively supporting this event and making it a big success. Uh, and none other than our member secretary, Dr. Sachidanand Joshi, who is always so supportive and always giving us full freedom to work in all these, and he's always the guidance is always available for us. Thank you, sir, for your kind, valuable support and guidance. Our honorable president, IGNCA Trust, Sri Ram Bahadur ji, in whose direction we always directing all such event, and all of you who have come all the way to attend this program. We are so grateful you to making this a memorable event. I am also grateful to all the viewers who have joined us on IGNCA Facebook Live and IGNCA YouTube channel, because this event is live and being viewed by the thousands of people in India and other countries, including Hungary. All my team members and all those whose names I'm not able to include because of paucity of time. With these words, thank you all. And now I invite you for a cup of tea, which is offered just outside this hall. Thank you very much, and look forward to you to other programs. Thank you.